Have you ever entered a quiet room, closed your eyes, and felt as if the world outside your skull was a roaring marketplace, full of competing voices, each vying for your attention? In that moment, I discovered the simple yet profound truth that everything I longed for, every goal, dream, and desire required a sanctuary of stillness within my mind. It was there, in that inner chamber, that the seeds of creation would sprout, blossom, and bear fruit. I remember the first time I truly attempted this practice. I sat cross-legged on a worn cushion, the morning light just beginning to filter through the curtains. The air was cool and my mind felt anything but. Thoughts flickered like restless fireflies, each one a tiny spark threatening to distract me. I realized that if I was to harness the creative power of my imagination, I needed to tame these fireflies, to gather them and hold them gently in a single jar of focus. So I began by giving shape to that inner sanctuary. I pictured a small vaulted room carved from marble, a place of hushed echoes and tranquil shadows. Marble because it endures, white because it invites purity of purpose. I saw a single window high on one wall, through which a soft beam of light fell on an empty pedestal. That pedestal was my intention, waiting to be set with a crystal clear image of my desire. In that visualization, every detail mattered. I paid attention to the texture of the marble under my fingers, the way the light danced across dust motes, the faint scent of sandalwood that seemed to linger in the still air. By fully immersing myself in this imagined space, I drew my mind away from the chatter of everyday concerns and anchored it to a sanctuary of my own creation. Once inside, I guided my thoughts toward the emptiness on the pedestal. There I placed the object of my longing, not as a wish, but as if it already stood there, tangible and irrefutable. Perhaps it was a promotion at work represented by a bronze trophy, engraved with words I would later read in real life. Perhaps it was a loving relationship, symbolized by a single red rose in a crystal vase. No matter the form, I treated it as present, as alive, and as mine. As I held that image, I noticed how my mind resisted. Old doubts whispered, "You can't have that. You're not ready. This won't last." Rather than battling those doubts, I acknowledged them. "I see you there," and then gently guided my attention back to the image on the pedestal. It was like tending a small flame. I shielded it from gusts of disbelief until it burned steadily on its own. With practice, the sanctuary grew more vivid. I added a soft carpet of moss underfoot to absorb any echo of uncertainty, and a curved bench where I could sit to let my attention rest. I imagined a soothing melody drifting through hidden vents, a tune that lulled my mind into deeper calm. All these details served one purpose: to make the space irresistible, so that my wandering thoughts would naturally gravitate there when I called them home. Over time, I found that this inner room became a refuge beyond my visualization sessions. In moments of stress, waiting for a delayed call, feeling anxious before a meeting, I could slip into that sanctuary with a single breath. Even for 60 seconds, my mind would settle around the pillar of focus I had erected. The result was astonishing. I felt less reactive, more poised, and remarkably more in control of my creative faculties. This process wasn't a passive daydream. It was an active, educational discipline. Each session taught me something new about the habits of my mind. I learned where my thoughts tended to wander, which emotions fueled distraction, and which sensory cues, like imagining the warmth of a candle flame, could anchor me most effectively. Through these observations, I gained self-awareness, which became the foundation for deeper mastery over my inner world. Moreover, this sacred space became a laboratory for experimentation. If a particular image didn't evoke strong enough feeling, I swapped it for another. If my mind balked at a certain visualization, I investigated why. Perhaps a buried fear lay behind that resistance. By turning curiosity inward instead of judgment, I transformed obstacles into opportunities for growth. In this way, the act of creating a mental sanctuary was both the beginning and the sustaining force of every manifestation I later achieved. It taught me that desire alone was insufficient. What truly moved mountains was the deliberate cultivation of focused awareness. And so, each time I yearned for something new, a fresh career milestone, a breakthrough in creativity, a deeper sense of peace, I returned to that marble hall, refilled the pedestal with a crisp, living image, and let the engine of focused attention carry it into form. And what I offer to you now is this simple invitation: build your own inner sanctum, Design it with sensory richness, populate it with unwavering intention, and visit it daily. In doing so, you give your desires the fertile ground they need to flourish. The world outside may clamor for your attention, but remember that true creation begins in the secret room of the mind, where focus is the key and imagination the gateway. I invite you now to consider the power of absolute clarity, for it is clarity that turns a wish into a blueprint and a dream into a living, breathing reality. Picture for a moment that you are an architect standing before an empty plot of land. Without precise measurements, without a detailed plan, how could you erect a building that stands firm against wind and time? In much the same way, your aspirations demand the same level of precision, down to the finest detail, if they are to manifest in the world outside your mind. I recall one afternoon when I sat at my desk with a blank journal before me, the pen trembling slightly in my hand. At first I wrote the words, "I want success," but they felt hollow, like a key that fits no lock. So I pressed on, asking myself, what does success look like? How does it sound? What emotions accompany its arrival? I closed my eyes and allowed my imagination to paint a scene. I saw myself walking into a sunlit office, colleagues greeting me by name, the voices warm with respect. I noticed the smooth grain of the mahogany desk under my fingertips, the subtle scent of fresh coffee mingling with the faint aroma of polished leather. In my mind, I heard the gentle hum of conversation, felt the steady beat of my own confident heartbeat. Only then did I realize that success without context was akin to a ship without a destination. With that realization, I committed to a new practice. Instead of vague wishes, I crafted vivid mental blueprints. Each day I would spend time outlining, in writing and in meditation, not only what I wanted to achieve, but exactly how it would appear to my senses. If I longed for abundance, I visualized a wallet heavy with crisp notes, the emerald glow of numbers in my bank statement flashing back at me. If I desired an inspiring creative breakthrough, I imagined the precise configuration of colors on my canvas, the stroke brush moving with effortless grace. This level of detail transformed my desires from distant stars into familiar constellations I could navigate by. But clarity is not a solo endeavor of the mind alone. It calls for a respectful partnership with all your senses. I began to incorporate sensory journaling into my routine. I wrote descriptions that weren't merely intellectual. I noted the taste of a celebratory glass of wine, the texture of the heirloom wood in my imagined home office, even the rhythm of raindrops on the window when I pictured myself writing in stormy inspiration. By engaging taste, touch, smell, sight, and sound, I wove a tapestry so rich that each thread tugged at my emotions, anchoring my focus even more firmly. Yet clarity demands more than imagination. It requires continuous refinement. After my visualization sessions, I reviewed what I had imagined with a critical eye. Were there gaps? Did any element feel forced or superficial? If the description of my surroundings fell flat, I asked why. Often I discovered hidden resistance, buried doubts that whispered, "You don't deserve this," or "This could never happen." Rather than battling those doubts directly, I treated them as guests to be escorted out, replacing their hushed protests with more vibrant imagery until every corner of my vision shone with authenticity. To deepen this practice, I turned to a simple question at the close of each day. What did I learn about my desire today? Perhaps I learned that the color palette I chose felt too cool and needed the warmth of sunset hues. Perhaps the imagined voices around me lacked genuine enthusiasm. By noting these subtleties, I not only sharpened the clarity of my goal, but also trained my awareness to catch inconsistencies in the world around me, reaffirming the bridge between inner vision and outer reality. Another transformative technique I adopted was creating a clarity map. On a large sheet of paper, I drew a central image representing my core desire. From it radiated branches labeled with specific sensory details, smells, emotions, textures, and conversations. I placed this map where I could see it each morning. The act of physically mapping out each facet of my wish reinforced its presence in my daily life. Often, as I poured coffee or took a moment to stretch, my eyes would wander to the map, reminding me of the precise vision I had chosen to call into being. In these exercises, I learned that clarity and focus are intertwined. The more precisely I could define my desire, the easier it became for my mind to sustain undivided attention. Like a camera lens narrowing its aperture to bring a single point into sharp relief, my inner focus crystallized around the blueprint I had built. Distractions still came, but they became like background noise rather than competing symphonies. But over time, I noticed an astounding shift. Opportunities began to align with my vision. A chance meeting felt like it matched the dialogue I had rehearsed. A sudden spark of creativity resonated with the colors on my clarity map. It was as if the world outside was reflecting back the vivid blueprint I had sketched in my mind's eye. This did not require force or struggle, simply the unwavering commitment to define, refine, and embody the details of my desire. What I share now is not a secret reserved for a few, but a living art, available to all. If you find your dreams slipping through the haze of uncertainty, pause and ask, how clear is the picture in my mind? Can I describe every shade, every vibration, every emotion tied to my goal? Take up a pen, a fresh page, and construct your own mental blueprint with the richness of a novelist's eye. We invite in every sense, refined with gentle curiosity, and return to it daily, until that vision feels more real than any doubt. Remember, the world responds not to flimsy outlines, but to bold, precise designs. Clarity is the compass that guides your creative power, and focus is the force that propels it forward. Cultivate both, and watch as the blueprint you hold in your mind steadily rises into your waking life, brick by vivid brick. I invite you to turn your attention now to the subtle yet transformative practice I call the mental diet, for it is the quality of the thoughts we feed that determines the strength of our focus. Imagine your mind as a vast garden. If you allow weeds of doubt, fear, and old stories to take root, they will choke out the flowering plants of your desires. Conversely, by carefully choosing which seeds to sow, gentle affirmations, empowering beliefs, vivid images, you cultivate a landscape where your deepest aspirations can thrive. I recall a morning when, despite my best intentions, I felt a tremor of uncertainty. I was preparing to present an idea that felt revolutionary to me, yet I sensed an undercurrent of worry threatening to undermine my confidence. It was then that I remembered the principle. Every thought that does not serve your vision is a seed of resistance. So I paused, closed my eyes, and observed the inner dialogue as one might watch birds fluttering in the sky. I noticed the familiar chirp of what if they judge you, and the persistent pecking at you're not ready. Rather than casting those thoughts out with aggression, I greeted them kindly, acknowledging their presence, and then invited them to rest elsewhere, redirecting my mind to a more nourishing image. This practice begins with gentle awareness. For several days, I kept a small notebook beside my meditation cushion. Each time I sensed my mind veering toward doubt or distraction, I would jot down the exact wording of the thought. Was it a phrase rooted in fear? I'll fail. I'm not enough. Or perhaps an echo of past disappointments? Remember last time it didn't work? By writing these out, I externalized the negative chatter, giving myself the clarity to see patterns rather than getting swept away in their tide. Once identified, each limiting thought was met with a carefully crafted affirmation. But not any affirmation, only those that resonated authentically. If I declared I am unstoppable but felt a twinge of disbelief, the phrase lost its potency. Instead, I refined the language until it felt like the soft comfort of a well-worn coat. Perhaps I would say, I welcome each challenge as a stepping stone to my growth. Or with every breath, I feel my confidence deepen. I spoke these aloud, allowing their vibrations to settle in my chest, replacing the tension that doubt had created. In this way, the mental diet is not a rigid restriction, but a nourishing regimen. Just as a body thrives when fed wholesome foods and rejects processed junk, the mind flourishes when it receives thoughts that energize and uplift. I found that consistency was key. Rather than waiting for a crisis, I dedicated moments every morning and evening to review my mental menu. I would visualize a column of light descending through my crown, purifying any residual negativity and filling me with renewed clarity. Then I affirmed, my mind is tuned to the frequency of my desire, letting those words echo until they felt irrefutable. To deepen this practice, I introduced sensory anchors. For instance, I selected a small, smooth stone and carried it in my pocket throughout the day. Whenever I felt an unhelpful thought arise, I would close my fist around the stone, breathe deeply, and mentally recite my chosen affirmation. The tactile connection rooted the process in the body, bridging the gap between abstract thought and tangible experience. Over time, the mere touch of that stone would trigger a shift in my focus, guiding me back to the nourishment I had planned. Another layer of the mental diet involves curating external inputs. I became mindful of the books I read, the conversations I engaged in, and even the media I consume. If a news headline or social media post seeded anxiety, I consciously redirected my attention toward content that inspired my vision. Perhaps it was a poem that spoke to the resilience of the human spirit, or a documentary on someone who had triumphed against odds. By choosing stimuli that aligned with my goals, I reinforced the internal affirmations I practiced, creating a harmonious ecosystem of thought. Yet the mental diet is not merely about replacement, it is also about understanding why certain weeds sprout in the first place. When a persistent fear or belief kept resurfacing, I treated it as a clue rather than an enemy. I would sit quietly and ask myself, where did this originate? Often I discovered echoes of childhood perceptions or cultural conditioning, stories I had adopted without question. By tracing the lineage of these thoughts, I could consciously release what no longer served me, pruning away deep-seated patterns with compassion and insight. This investigative approach transformed the mental diet from a chore into an act of curiosity-driven learning. I felt like a gardener who not only removes weeds, but studies their roots to prevent regrowth. Each insight became a lesson in self-awareness, equipping me to safeguard my focus more effectively in the future. Perhaps the most profound aspect of this practice is its ripple effect. As I refined my inner dialogue, I noticed that the world around me responded in kind. Opportunities that once seemed random began to align with my refined focus. Conversations flowed more smoothly, challenges felt surmountable, and a quiet confidence infused each encounter. It was as though, by tending my mental garden with care, I had tuned into a generative current that moved synchronously with my intentions. What I offer to you now is this simple framework. Observe without judgment. Identify the thoughts that do not serve your goal, and compassionately replace them with affirmations that resonate at a deeper level. Use sensory anchors, perhaps a stone, a specific breath pattern, or a chosen scent to reinforce these shifts. Curate your external environment to support your inner regimen, and investigate recurring beliefs to uproot them at their source. In doing so, you transform your mind from a field of erratic impulses into a consciously designed landscape where every thought so nourishes the growth of your desires. This mental diet is not a momentary act, but a lifelong discipline, one that, when practiced with consistency and curiosity, becomes as natural as breathing. And as you feed your mind with thoughts of clarity, confidence, and conviction, you'll find your focus evolving into an unwavering force, ready to bring everything you desire into the realm of tangible reality. I invite you now to explore the alchemy of feeling, for emotion is the catalyst that transforms a mental image into living reality. Imagine you are standing at the edge of a still lake at sunrise. In one hand, you hold a pebble inscribed with your deepest desire. In the other, you hold the power of feeling, an energy so powerful it ripples through the water and carries your intention to the unseen depths. You toss the pebble without the force of feeling, it merely skitters across the surface. But when you infuse that toss with genuine emotion, excitement, gratitude, conviction, it plunges deep, setting unseen currents into motion. I recall the first time I practiced this, I had envisioned a moment of professional recognition, a standing ovation after a presentation. I pictured the applause, the nods of respect, the warmth in the room. Yet when I closed my eyes to feel the scene, something felt missing. My mind observed the details, but my heart remained distant. It was then I recognized that feeling is not an afterthought. It is the very heartbeat of manifestation. So I leaned into the sensation, imagined the slight quiver of nerves turning into electric excitement, felt the swell of pride in my chest, tasted the faint tang of celebratory champagne on my tongue. Suddenly, the scene wasn't merely seen, it was lived. To cultivate this power, I began an exercise I call emotional immersion. Each morning, before the world stirred, I settled into a quiet posture and brought the chosen scene to life in 3 dimensions. The colors more vivid, the sounds more resonant, and above all, the feelings more palpable. If I sought confidence, I guided myself to feel the warmth of certainty spreading from my solar plexus to every limb. If I sought abundance, I let gratitude pour through my veins, picturing each grateful breath as a golden current that illuminated my entire being. By dwelling in the emotional core of my desire for several uninterrupted minutes, I rewired my subconscious to accept that feeling as my new reality. This practice also taught me the importance of emotional authenticity. If I forced an emotion, that didn't align, forcing joy when I felt nothing but anxiety. The disconnect created resistance rather than resonance. Instead, I learned to start where I was. On days when anxiety hovered, I acknowledged it. I see you, old friend. And then gently guided it toward calm. I would breathe deeply, imagining each exhale as a release of tension and each inhale as an invitation for serenity. From that quieter space, I then introduced the desired feeling, allowing it to grow naturally rather than forcing it into place. Over time, I discovered that pairing physical movement with emotional focus deepened the immersion. I would stand and gently sway as if to the music of my inner scene, feeling my feet rooted yet fluid. Or I would raise my arms as though receiving a cherished gift, letting my body echo the feeling of triumph. These small, deliberate movements bridged the gap between inner sensation and outer experience, reinforcing the mind-body bond that makes feeling so potent. Another cornerstone of this approach is the feel and freeze technique. Once I reached the apex of the desired emotion, when my chest felt full, my breath felt steady, and my mind held no doubts, I would mentally freeze the scene as though stepping into a photograph. I noted every detail, the tilt of my smile, the cadence of the applause, the texture of my clothing. By cementing these sensory emotional snapshots, I created mental anchors I could return to at will. Later in the day, if my focus faltered, I simply recalled one of these anchors. The warmth in my fingertips, the echo of clapping, and the corresponding emotion would reignite, restoring my alignment with the desired outcome. In educational terms, feeling is the neural accelerator of focused attention. Neuroscience shows that emotions heighten neural activity, strengthening the pathways associated with the thoughts and images we hold. In practice, this means that every time you deliberately feel the reality you wish to create, you reinforce its neural signature, making it more familiar to your subconscious mind. Familiarity equals acceptance. Acceptance equals embodiment. Embodiment equals manifestation. Thus, the simple act of feeling shifts your entire internal ecosystem toward the fulfillment of your desire. To make this practice sustainable, I wove feeling exercises into daily routines. While washing dishes, I would imagine the steadiness of gratitude flowing through my fingertips as I scrubbed. While walking, I would let the rhythm of my steps echo the confident stride I envisioned in my future self. These micro moments of feeling trained my mind to sustain emotion beyond formal meditation sessions, reminding my subconscious that the feeling of my desire was not confined to rare occasions, but was intended to color every moment of my life. Finally, I learned that feeling must culminate in unwavering faith. Feeling nurtures faith, and faith fuels feeling in an upward spiral of creative power. On days when doubt crept back in, I reminded myself of past instances when feeling had borne fruit. I revisited those mental photographs, felt again the jubilation of success or the serenity of inner peace, and let gratitude wash over me for the proof already given. In this way, feeling became both the spark and the sustainer of my focus, a vibrational beacon that guided my attention ever closer to the realization of every longing. What I share with you now is an invitation to become the weaver of your own emotional tapestry. Choose a scene, infuse it with authentic feeling, anchor it in the body, repeat throughout your day. In doing so, you awaken the hidden currents that transform thought into form and imagination into reality. Allow feeling to become your faithful ally and watch as every intention you hold finds its way into the world, carried on the wings of genuine emotion. I invite you now to reflect on the power of sustained practice, for focus is not a single lightning strike, but a steady flame that must be tended day after day. In the beginning, commitment can feel like lifting a weight you've never encountered before. Your mind strains to hold the vision steady, and distractions loom like shadows, eager to snatch your attention away. Yet just as a musician hones skill through scales and arpeggios, so too must the aspirant of creation train attention through regular, deliberate exercise. Imagine setting aside a few precious minutes each morning before the rush of emails and errands to return to your inner sanctuary. You make a ritual of lighting a candle or arranging a small offering, a cup of herbal tea, the touch of a smooth stone in your palm, symbols that signal to your subconscious, now is the time to focus. In that sacred window, you revisit the image on your mental pedestal, breathe life into its details, and feel the glow of your desire warming every fiber of your being, though it may feel brief, perhaps only 5 or 10 minutes. Those moments are the scaffolding upon which greater structures will rise. Consistency matters more than length. I learned this when, in a burst of enthusiasm, I tried meditating for an hour on a single afternoon, only to find my mind more restless than ever. The next day I scaled back to just 5 minutes, but made it a non-negotiable appointment in my schedule. The result was surprising. The shorter practice, repeated daily, built far more momentum than the sporadic marathon sessions. Each repetition deepened the grooves in my neural pathways, making it easier for focus to flow naturally until it became a subconscious habit rather than a forced effort. To support this habit, I introduced environmental triggers. For instance, I placed a particular cushion in the corner of my room, the soft indigo square that I reserved solely for focus practice. Whenever I saw or touched that cushion, my mind automatically anticipated the session ahead. Similarly, I designated a specific playlist of gentle instrumental music. Its opening notes became the cue to settle inward. These external signals synced with my internal intention, creating a reliable bridge between waking life and the world of imagination. Persistence through resistance is equally important. There were mornings when I awoke heavy with fatigue, or evenings when fatigue gnawed at my resolve. In those moments, I practiced what I call the 2-minute rule. Promise yourself just 2 minutes of focus. Almost without fail, once I began, my mind found its rhythm, and the simple act of showing up carried me through the full session. This technique honors both discipline and compassion, acknowledging human fallibility while refusing to surrender to it. Keeping track of progress proved invaluable. I maintained a simple journal, just 3 columns: date, duration of practice, and a brief note on how vividly the image felt. Over weeks, I watched a pattern emerge. Days with shorter but consistent practice often yielded deeper immersion than longer, infrequent efforts. Seeing the incremental improvements on paper encouraged me to maintain momentum, reminding me that each small session contributed to a cumulative effect far greater than the sum of its parts. Beyond solo practice, community can foster endurance. I discovered an online circle of like-minded individuals who shared insights on maintaining focus. Even if I never met them in person, knowing others were dedicating their mornings to the same inner work amplified my own commitment. We exchanged encouragement, celebrated breakthroughs, and offered tips for overcoming common hurdles. This collective energy became a subtle current of support, carrying me along on days when my own resolve wavered. Importantly, setting realistic expectations guards against burnout. I learned to honor my natural rhythms, choosing shorter sessions on hectic days and longer ones when time allowed. Rather than seeing missed days as failure, I viewed them as feedback, an opportunity to adjust and re-engage with fresh awareness. By reframing practice as a dialogue rather than a demand, I preserved both intensity and kindness in my approach. Scientifically speaking, repetition builds myelin sheaths around neural pathways, increasing the speed and efficiency of signals in the brain. In practical terms, this means that the more you practice focusing on your desire, the more effortless it becomes. What once required conscious effort gradually shifts into the background of your awareness, so that sustaining attention feels as natural as breathing. Finally, anchoring practice in celebration cements progress. After each session, I take a moment to acknowledge my commitment, to pat myself on the back, and to feel gratitude for the inner work completed. These acts of recognition transform practice from a chore into a source of personal pride and joy. Over time, the anticipation of that gentle celebration became yet another incentive to show up for myself. But what I share with you now is this: carve out your moments of stillness, signal your mind with simple rituals, honor consistency over duration, track your growth with kindness, and rally fellow travelers when you can. By weaving these elements into a daily tapestry of practice, focus evolves from a fleeting guest into a steadfast companion, one that carries you forward toward every dream you hold. In our journey toward unwavering focus, we must learn to clear the field of distractions, for the mind cannot hold a laser beam of attention when it is being pelted by pebbles of noise and clutter. Imagine your awareness as a pond on a windless afternoon. Only when the surface is still can you see the fish beneath. Yet in our daily lives, gusts of social media notifications, news alerts, and competing to-do lists batter that surface until it churns into restless waves. The first step then is to become the calm observer who notices the ripples and gently sets them aside, refusing to let them pull your focus away from the vision you have chosen to cultivate. I remember one evening when I sat down to engage in a focused visualization, only to find my phone buzzing incessantly with messages and updates. My mind darted toward each beep and buzz, intrigued by every snippet of information. It felt like trying to read a book in the middle of a crowded cafe. Frustrated, I realized that if I wanted to deepen my creative practice, I needed to establish firm boundaries, physical, digital, and mental. around my time of focus. So I began with the simplest measure, phone on silent, placed face down in another room. Almost immediately, the friction that had resisted my immersion vanished, and I could return to the still center of my inner world. But clearing distractions extends beyond silencing devices. It requires a thoughtful curation of our environment. I found that the presence of unfinished tasks in view, an open laptop with dozens of tabs, a stack of documents on my desk, acted like magnets for my wandering attention. To counter this, I created a ritual of workspace reset. Before each practice session, I would tuck away loose papers into a drawer, close unneeded browser windows, and place only the materials I required, often nothing more than my journal and a pen, on the desktop. This simple act of tidying not only reduced visual noise, but signaled to my subconscious that this space and time were consecrated solely for the creative task at hand. Equally important is the management of auditory stimuli. Many assume absolute silence is the ideal, yet I discovered that a certain kind of gentle background ambience can actually support focus. I experimented with soft instrumental music, the steady hiss of a rain soundtrack, and even white noise generators. Over time, I noticed that particular soundscapes acted as a protective bubble, dampening external disturbances, traffic, distant conversations, stray thoughts, while providing a subtle rhythm that anchored my attention. The key is to choose non-verbal, repetitive sounds that never demand more of your ear than a passing breeze. Digital detoxification also plays a vital role. In our connected age, every ping invites us into a new world, often far removed from our creative goals. I instituted periods of digital fasting, especially during my core visualization and writing windows. That meant no email, no social platforms, and no news feeds for a predetermined block of time, typically as little as 30 minutes at first, expanding to an hour or more as I grew comfortable. I announced these intervals to close friends and colleagues so they knew not to expect an immediate reply. To my surprise, this boundary was respected and even admired, and the freedom it gave me to dive deeply into my imagination proved invaluable. Of course, setting boundaries externally must be matched by internal discipline. Even when physical distractions are removed, the mind can conjure its own diversions, worries about tomorrow's meeting, errant memories from the past, irrelevant mental to-do lists. To handle these, I adopted the practice of thought buffering. Whenever a stray concern surfaced, I imagined placing it on an invisible shelf, a gentle mental gesture that said, "I'll attend to you later." I visualized writing it on a small slip of paper and tucking it into a neat folder labeled later. By reassuring my mind that these unfinished thoughts would not be ignored, but held apart until the appropriate time, I freed my focus to remain fully immersed in the creative exercise. As I refined these strategies, I discovered that the benefits extended far beyond my formal practice sessions. In meetings, I found myself less prone to multitasking, more engaged with others, and able to capture critical insights without succumbing to scattered attention. My reading became deeper and more enjoyable as I resisted the urge to slip into social feeds between paragraphs. Even moments of rest felt more restful because I wasn't scrolling through digital detritus, but allowing my mind to wander in richer, self-generated landscapes. Clearing distractions also invites the cultivation of supportive inputs. Just as a gardener removes weeds and plants nourishing crops, you can consciously choose media and company that reinforce your focus. I began to subscribe to newsletters that offered concise, inspiring prompts rather than endless streams of updates. I limited my social media circles to voices that uplifted and challenged me toward growth. And I engaged in conversations that sparked curiosity rather than drained my mental energy. Over time, this careful curation transformed my entire information ecosystem into one that consistently pointed back to my creative vision. What I share now is a roadmap for reclaiming your attention in a noisy world. Turn off what you can, tune into what supports you, and cultivate both your external and internal environments as sacred spaces for creation. Recognize distractions not as immutable enemies, but as visitors you can greet courteously and then set aside. In doing so, you forge a protected channel for your imagination to flow freely, unencumbered by the demands of random interruptions. The clearer the field you maintain, the more power you give your focus to shape reality, and the more effortlessly you will find everything you desire coming into harmonious alignment with your deepest intentions. I invite you now to wander through the boundless landscapes of your imagination. For it is in the freedom to explore that the seeds of creation take root and flourish. Imagine unlocking a door in your mind and stepping into a realm where nothing is impossible, a place where the contours of your deepest longing stretch out in every direction, waiting for your curious gaze. In this playground of the mind, every detail whispers a clue, every sensation offers a lesson, and every vista strengthens the unwavering conviction that what you envision can and will come to pass. I remember the first time I truly gave myself permission to roam freely inside my own imagination. I had grown accustomed to carefully sculpting each image, benchmarks lined up, sensory elements placed with precision, but I realized that sometimes the mind needs uncharted territory. One evening I lay back on the floor of my study, closed my eyes, and released all expectations. Rather than guiding the scene, I simply observed. At first the images fluttered by like passing clouds. A gentle path winding through a golden meadow. A distant melody played on invisible strings. A warm breeze carrying the scent of jasmine. I let each fragment drift into view without judgment or direction, soaking in the richness of spontaneity. As I floated along this psychic stream, I noticed that certain images resonated more deeply, like magnets drawing my attention. A sunlit archway appeared, carved from living wood, vines spiraling upward toward the sky. I stepped beneath it and found myself in an open gallery of possibility, where each painting on the wall depicted a scene from my desired future. I approached one canvas and saw myself greeting a friend with genuine delight, the contours of my smile and the sparkle in my eyes rendered with such clarity that my heart swelled. In another, I witnessed a moment of quiet triumph, a project completed, a goal achieved, the room filled with gentle applause, the textures, the sounds, even the subtlest echo of emotion seemed to leap off the surface and envelop me. This free-roaming exploration taught me that imagination is not a static photograph, but a living, breathing ecosystem. Each time I allowed myself to wander, I discovered hidden alcoves where my desires took on new dimensions. I learned that an outcome I thought I wanted could be enriched by a detail I hadn't yet considered. The silver sheen of a pen I might one day hold. The soft rustle of pages turning as I read my own published words. The comforting weight of affirmations taped to the back of a door. By giving my mind the liberty to reveal these nuances, I built a more vibrant tapestry of possibility, one that my focus could latch onto with renewed enthusiasm. Educationally speaking, this practice engages what neuroscientists call divergent thinking, the capacity to generate multiple solutions and perspectives. Instead of confining your vision to a single rigid script, you open pathways for creativity to blossom. Each spontaneous detail you uncover strengthens neural networks associated with your goal, making the desired outcome feel more familiar and attainable. In practice, this means that when unexpected opportunities arise in your waking life, your mind quickly recognizes their alignment with your vision, and you are primed to seize them. To cultivate this roaming imagination, I adopted a simple nightly ritual. Before drifting into sleep, I would whisper an invitation, "Show me something new." Then I lay quietly, allowing the mind's eye to wander without interference. If a vivid scene appeared, a place I felt compelled to visit, I would reach for my journal and sketch a rough outline. Sometimes the detail that emerged in dreams would translate into a fresh insight during waking hours, a guiding symbol, a potent phrase, a novel metaphor. These sketches became maps of my inner world, each one reinforcing my focus by revealing facets of my desire I hadn't yet articulated consciously. I also experimented with sensory prompts to spark this free exploration. A single spritz of lavender on my wrists, the muted flicker of candlelight, or the gentle hum of a singing bowl invited the mind to drift beyond habitual patterns. In these moments, I discovered that certain triggers could open doors to entirely new realms of possibility. One afternoon, while listening to the distant call of church bells in a recording, I was transported to a small village square where I stood beneath a banner announcing my works exhibition. The villagers greeted me with warmth and curiosity, their faces reflecting the respect I had longed for. That unplanned scene planted a seed of confidence I carried into future presentations. Perhaps the most powerful lesson I learned was that imagination thrives on curiosity. Whenever I encountered an image that intrigued me, I paused and asked, "What is this? Why is it here? What does it want to show me?" By treating my inner visions as guides rather than mere fantasies, I cultivated a sense of playfulness and wonder. This attitude dissolved any lingering skepticism. Instead of doubting the reality of my dreams, I became an eager explorer, documenting each discovery with delight. It is also worth noting that free-roaming imagination need not be confined to seated meditation. I found that everyday moments, walking through a park, brewing tea, even waiting for water to boil, could become portals to exploration. If a breeze rustled the leaves above me, I imagined the sound as applause welcoming my arrival in some distant future hall of acclaim. If steam curled from my cup, I saw it shape the words of an article I would one day write. These micro-adventures kept my focus agile, allowing it to roam yet always circle back to the core desire that guided my journey. Above all, free-roaming imagination reinforces trust in your creative faculties. When you witness the mind's natural inclination to generate inspiring, coherent scenes related to your desire, you internalize the belief that your inner world is a reliable source of guidance. This trust dissolves hesitation and fuels confidence, turning each day into an opportunity to live in alignment with the unfolding story of your dreams. So I offer you this. Open the door, step into the unknown, and let your imagination lead you where it will. Treat each unexpected vision as a teacher and record its lessons with gratitude. Over time, the tapestry of your inner landscapes will grow richer and more detailed, and your focus will gain the flexibility and depth needed to bring every desire into tangible form. In the freedom of exploration, you'll find the compass that guides your attention unerringly toward the life you are destined to create. I invite you now to step fully into the reality you have shaped within your mind and carry its essence into every gesture, word, and breath. For the most powerful affirmation of your desire's fulfillment is living as though it were already true. Imagine slipping into a favorite garment that fits you perfectly. Its fabric hugs every contour with ease, and from the moment you feel it against your skin, you hold yourself differently. The embodiment works the same way. When you dress your posture, tone your voice, and align your daily habits with the person you see in your inner vision, you send a silent message not only to yourself but to the world around you that your new identity is non-negotiable. I remember a morning when I faced a crucial meeting that could open the door to a long-awaited opportunity. Anxiety fluttered in my stomach like restless butterflies, but I recalled the image I had practiced each night, calm, articulate, and confident. So I rose early, stood before the mirror, and summoned that self. I noticed my shoulders lift slightly as I straightened my spine, my chin tilted upward to convey openness. I practiced a steady, measured breathing pattern until my heartbeat slowed, and then I spoke a few lines of affirmation aloud, enunciating each word with clarity. In that moment, I felt the membrane between imagination and reality thin. I was not acting. I was simply allowing the full expression of who I already was. Carrying this embodiment into your daily life begins with small, intentional adjustments. Consider the cadence of your speech. Do you rush through sentences, leaving breathless gaps where confidence should be? Experiment with pausing, brief, grounded pauses that let your words land with weight. Notice the volume of your voice. Is it soft and tentative, or does it resonate with the conviction you feel internally? Practice speaking your dreams aloud in the tone you would use if they were facts, not fantasies. Over days and weeks, these verbal refinements become ingrained, rewiring your body's habitual responses to mirror the empowered version of yourself. Posture, too, is a silent language of embodiment. When we slump or hunch, our minds interpret those signals as uncertainty or defensiveness. Conversely, standing tall with your chest open and feet firmly planted communicates readiness and self-assurance. I made it a habit to check my posture at natural transition points. After each meeting, before answering the phone, even while waiting for water to boil, a gentle adjustment, a straightening of the back, a softening of the shoulders, sent a subconscious nudge that reinforced the reality I had rehearsed in meditation. But embodiment extends beyond the physical. It weaves through the fabric of your daily routines. Observe the rituals of the person you are becoming. Do they greet each morning with gratitude? Then begin your day by listing 3 things you appreciate, spoken aloud or written in a journal. Do they prioritize clear, focused work blocks? Then carve out time in your calendar for uninterrupted attention, honoring it as you would any important appointment. Do they nourish their body and mind with healthy foods and restorative rests? Then prepare meals and plan breaks that reflect that commitment. Each action, no matter how mundane, becomes a brushstroke in the portrait of your future self. In educational terms, this is called enactive mastery. By repeatedly acting in ways that align with your desired identity, you strengthen neural pathways that encode those behaviors as natural. Research in psychology shows that our sense of self is shaped less by abstract intentions and more by the patterns of our actions. Thus, when you consistently behave as if your dream has already unfolded, you not only train your body to perform with confidence, but also reprogram your subconscious mind to accept the new identity as its baseline. Of course, perfection is not the goal. There will be moments when old habits creep in, slouched shoulders, hurried speech, self-doubt lurking beneath the surface. Rather than criticize yourself, treat these moments as signals pointing to areas that need gentle reinforcement. Each time you notice a lapse, simply acknowledge it. I see you there, and then correct with kindness. Straighten your back, slow your breath, repeat your affirmation. In doing so, you cultivate a compassionate relationship with your own growth, understanding that embodiment is an ongoing human process rather than a one-time event. Another key dimension of embodiment is emotional resonance. If you speak with the posture of confidence but feel a chasm of fear inside, the dissonance weakens your impact. To bridge that gap, cultivate practices that raise your baseline emotional tone. Brief moments of gratitude throughout the day, random acts of kindness that lift your spirits, or quick visualization breaks where you revisit the triumphant scene you've created. By weaving emotion and action together, you foster coherence between how you feel and how you move, creating a magnetic presence that draws opportunities to you. Embodiment also calls for attunement to your environment. Notice how your physical surroundings can support or undermine your new identity. If you envision yourself as a focused creator, surround yourself with objects that inspire that role. Perhaps a clean desk, a favorite pen, or artwork that stirs your ambition. If you see yourself as a calm, centered individual, introduce elements that soothe the senses. A small plant, a diffuser with your preferred essential oil, or soft instrumental music playing quietly. Each environmental cue reinforces the identity you embody, making the transition from inner vision to outer reality smoother. Finally, share your embodied self with others. Invite friends or colleagues to witness the change by simply showing up as you, the focused, accomplished, radiant you, without announcing any script. Let your demeanor speak volumes. The ease in your greeting, the confidence in your suggestions, the warmth in your attentiveness. Notice how people respond differently when you inhabit your evolved self. These external reflections serve as powerful feedback loops, confirming that the version of you have cultivated in solitude can thrive in the world at large. Through this practice of living as if, you dissolve the boundary between imagination and everyday life. Each gesture, each word, each breath becomes an affirmation that the world you desire is not somewhere ahead, but very much here and now, expressed through your posture and your presence. By embodying the end result, you accelerate its arrival and anchor your focus in the tangible realm of experience, where dreams are not just thought, but lived. As you stand at the threshold of your own becoming, remember that every moment of focus you've cultivated, the sanctuary you built, the clarity you honed, the thoughts you nourished, the feelings you immersed yourself in, the rituals you embraced, the distractions you cleared, the realms you explored, and the self you embodied, has been preparing you to step fully into the reality you desire. These practices are not mere exercises. They are invitations to reclaim the creative power that lives in the quiet corners of your mind. With each intentional breath, each vivid scene, each act of kindness toward your own growth, you weave a stronger thread between imagination and experience. There will be days when your mind drifts, when doubts leak through the cracks or old habits tug at your attention. In those moments, extend compassion to yourself. Acknowledge where you wandered, then return with gentle persistence to the flame of your intention. Just as you would guide a friend back to a path of healing, know that mastery arises not from perfect performance, but from loving dedication. Showing up time and again to remind yourself that you are the architect of your own reality. Carry this work into every aspect of your life. Let your postures, your words, and your daily choices reflect the fulfillment you already claim. Surround yourself with symbols that reinforce your vision. Share your embodied presence with those you meet and celebrate every tiny victory. In doing so, you transform each day into a living affirmation that the world you long for is not somewhere in the future, but here, unfolding in tandem with your unwavering focus. Continue to tend the garden of your mind and watch as your intentions blossom into the life you have imagined.